Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Nikki Westcombe. We are the founders of Nexus Performance. Joining us on this wild ride is our heavyweight coaching team, ready to unleash their expertise to solve any problems in your journey to getting strong and jacked.
Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
So pump up the volume and let's get into this.
Not this weekend, the following weekend.
Yeah, the 19th. 18th. Yeah, 18th on the Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll come out a day before.
No.
Yeah? This one.
Oh, fuck.
It will do. Shout out to the Nexus novice.
We should really start to nail our fucking dates a bit better, eh?
It's very confusing living in the real world, if that's what you call this one.
Podcast world.
Podcast world where time
so white here.
simply doesn't. It's everywhere. It's not universal to this. It is universal.
I've been getting sun.
Apart from the last couple of days where it's been absolutely pouring.
I went
down
this
with rain.
morning.
Was there sun?
Yep.
Oh.
It was really sunny.
Nice.
Now it's cloudy again.
Pretty sad. You got your 15 minutes.
Mm.
Yep. This is the last potential podcast.
So you will see us.
For Josh and Alex, as mum and dad are back.
Probably our last week employed too.
Yeah. Hopefully Mickey doesn't watch too many of the episodes we recorded. But if she does, thanks. It's been great. Had a great time. It's been fun.
Real. Mum, Thanks for watching.
Yep. Shout out to Patrick, Honza.
Honza watched. Yep.
I think someone else maybe mentioned they watched it once.
Shout out to Carson, who watched and then got upset because we insulted him and then didn't watch again. Just thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. It's been a great time.
It's been a pleasure to bring this to you.
Yeah. We hope that we're still employed next week and you can still catch us at the gym on the front desk.
Or social media.
Or social media.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where you live most of your life.
Fuck. Yeah.
So we've got, we do have the Nexus game still coming up, 9th of December. That'll be down at the Burleigh Town Hotel.
That is correct. Reese Maston for the after party.
Shout out to Reese Maston. We'll be seeing you at the after party. I think he's going to compete. I think he's going to pull 300. I think that's what he wants to do.
I will flog him.
What, at the deadlift?
Yeah.
Just in general?
Nah, I like him.
Yeah.
We could be friends. Found out the other day that he's my same age as me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Thought he
46.
Thought he was, bro, I'm like 5 years younger than you.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
Let's not go there today.
No.
But on the other news, Mum and Dad are back today.
Today?
Well, today with this podcast recording, which will be like last week for the people listening at home.
Yeah.
So they've enjoyed a whirlwind adventure in the United States of America. I'm sure they'll fill you in on that when they come back.
Oh, yeah. We've got meetings.
Sure,
booked.
Wilbo will have 5 words.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, had a good time.
Yep. America's cool.
Everything was just a surprise. Actually, no, he booked Periphery.
Yep.
And he booked the Lakers game.
That was his input.
That was the
for a
only
month.
2 things. 6 weeks. I think that was the only 2 things he booked the whole time. He was like, yeah, I got the most important things sorted.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Mickey's just doing her thing in the background, like hotels,
pushing
flights, booking everything.
Not to mention the wedding that was only a couple of weeks before they left. Not even. They've been pushing it.
They've been going
Mickey's
hard.
been pushing it. Wilbo's been along for the ride.
Yeah, it's all just it's just an adventure at that point.
Yeah.
What am I doing today?
Yeah.
Mickey whips out the itinerary. It's
Yes.
like, so at 3:03 p.m.
This is going to happen, and then we'll do this, and then Wilbo will talk about the one thing that he planned. He was telling me that pretty much the whole time in the lead up to his holiday. He's like, I can't wait for Periphery. It's going to be sick.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm just glad. I hope they had a great time. They deserve
Me
it.
too.
It's been a long time coming for them to have a massive holiday.
Yep.
Coming back refreshed, ready to deal with all our shit again.
Yep. We've got
We've done well.
No,
Gym hasn't burnt down.
Gym has not burnt down.
Either of the gyms.
Either of the gyms. Even the Spotify is working again.
Yeah,
Miraculously.
we fixed it.
I don't know how.
If you were not in the gym in the last 6 weeks, then you will not understand that our Spotify has it just went to shit for no reason. It would just turn off We did every troubleshooting thing you could think of.
Reset the iPad.
Reset the iPad, updated the iPad, restored the iPad to factory settings, deleted Spotify, re-downloaded Spotify, signed into different Spotify accounts, tried to use Safari Spotify, tried to use Google Chrome. Nothing would just stop.
Everything.
You'd just be middle of a song, geeing yourself up for a lift, and then all of a sudden silence, and you had to deal with your own thoughts, which is quite a scary process.
Not what you want during comp prep.
Not what I want. No.
It really bothered me, as I consider myself quite good with tech. I have the iPad here. I've got laptops at home. I've been around computers and stuff all my life, thanks to Dad. Shout out to Dad. Not that he listens.
Maybe he could.
Maybe he could.
We need an extra viewer.
Yeah, he can help us troubleshoot the iPad. But it's like everything just simply did not work. And it's just like, we've grown up with technology so much to the point where we just expect it to do It's a miracle that this shit even exists anyway, let alone works as probably consistently as it does. But as soon as it doesn't, it's like your car. You take your car for granted until I can speak about that because we had a whole half a podcast on that.
Yeah.
But it's like as soon as the thing stops working, that's when your world really starts to come in on you and you're like, how? Why? Like everything kind of falls apart.
Yeah, it was a big deal in this gym.
The music is a big deal.
Yeah.
We like to have quality music.
We had to listen to SoundCloud.
That was not quality music.
No.
Or YouTube with ads or something.
SoundCloud, and then it'd just randomly, like, there'd be a song, but it'd be like an acoustic cover that some random kid from Alabama's done or something, so it's not even the real song. And you're vibing out, and then you just start listening, you're like, hang on a second.
This reminds me that I sent a message to Mickey being like, can you please record some of the Periphery set? Like, I've never seen them live, and I've listened to them for almost a decade. And I sent her one song. I'm like, you'll like this one in particular. And she's like, oh, Will reckons they won't play that. Like, they're probably going to play new stuff or whatever. They played an acoustic version live of that song for the first time ever. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Did she record it?
She recorded a bit of it, a snippet, snifter.
Mm,
Barely
just
barely
enough.
listen. Just enough to tease.
bit of blue ball action.
Yeah.
Rats.
So we have a topic today.
Yeah, we do actually have a topic.
We have a topic. We're talking training splits.
Actually, before we rip into that, what did we launch yesterday?
Oh,
I reckon
news.
we needed. That's a big thing. We need to say that because Gambaru times / Nexus
Cross.
Cross.
I think it's Cross.
Yeah, Cross Nexus is live.
Live,
and you can get at it yourself.
Yes, we'll have some perhaps links in the show notes and things like that. Tam sorted out.
There is also links in our Instagram bio.
Yep.
Or you can message any of our Nexus coaches or Nexus AU.
Is that the battery gone?
Yes.
Fantastic.
I thought they were brand new batteries.
I thought they were too. They've been on charge the whole week.
Maybe it's not plugged in.
Maybe it's not
Do you want
plugged
to try? Oh, no, because it'll turn the camera off.
It will turn the camera off. Should we just roll? Let's just have an audio podcast.
All right, we've got an audio podcast today, guys. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
But yes, Gambaru times Nexus. It is a thing. It is launched. We have codes. We have a discount code. There is a sale until...
I think it's Sunday this week.
So the sale will be done. But that's huge news because Mickey and Will, as we said, they've been working incredibly hard in the background, leading up to going on their honeymoon and having their wedding and things like that. And so many people didn't... So many people didn't really understand what was going on or why everything was happening and the way in which things were being done. And it was all to set it up for this. So when you access the Gambaru app now, you have access to Nexus Performance.
Will Crozier has designed a series of programs and a good structure and format in which you can follow through. You can obviously chop and change as well and kind of choose your own adventures. I think the way that it was described to us, the Gambaru app has an absolute plethora of programs from varying coaches. Hello,
just keep going.
Yeah. From a plethora of coaches on there, including now Nexus Performance. So we have our
Nexus are the best.
Nexus are the best program for powerlifting and strength training. We are the ones on that app that are going to be kind of.
But if you want to do acrobatics or BJJ or
some mobility stuff in there,
mobility, range of strength. Honestly, I can't even list how many are in there. It's an incredible value. So
you've used the app, haven't you?
Yeah, I had Gambaru long before it was an app.
Yeah.
Long before any of it existed. I think I joined up Gambaru. I was like one of the first people to join Gambaru way back in the day. And I think the first 2 videos were just a bench tutorial from Sebastian Oreb.
Okay, nice.
Or segment or something that him and Eugene had done.
Yep.
And there was like, then this was at the point where Eugene was sort of uploading content weekly or bi-weekly or something like that. And it was kind of just like every week I'd log in and I'd be like, oh, I get to study something new today. And you kind of just chose whatever was there because there wasn't a great deal. So it's incredible to see the transformation.
So it's more of an education.
It was an education hub at the start, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think it got to the point where, because there was so much education in there and like Eugene had taught so much on the back end, I guess there's only so much like theory and things like that you can utilize. And he just got to the point where he said, let's throw prac in. And now it is what it is, and it's massive.
Yeah. So for a very low price, you can access some of Nexus Performance's well-designed powerlifting templates.
Yep.
And you can run through those as you see fit. There are a few options and guidelines, and
there's a forum in there.
There's a forum in there
so
as
you can
well.
have a chat.
Yep.
So you can have a chat. I
have
definitely know
questions.
Wilbo's in there.
Yep.
I think a couple of our other coaches will be in there to have a chat, answer some questions you guys might have.
Lifting videos.
Help with lifting videos because there will be an ability to upload lifting videos into there. So there'll be coaches who are able to review them for you and just keep you on track with what you want to achieve.
What a fantastic service.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
Speaking of training splits.
Was that your segue?
Yeah, it was good, eh?
That needs work. Yeah.
No, it was good.
No wonder we're off the podcast next week. Training splits,
Best.
do they matter?
Absolutely not.
That's a no from Josh.
No,
No.
they don't.
Thank you.
I'm sick of people thinking they do.
Why do you say that?
Because people get so caught up in minutia and nuance, and they're like, the best way to do, and this is again from the point of internet people and things like that. This is the best way to. You want to the internet people. That's what I call influencers nowadays.
Okay, right.
The internet people.
Yep.
Because they just live online.
Yep.
This is the best way to do this, and if you want to grow this is how you do it. It's like, well, that's probably one of 1,000 ways to grow that. But yes, absolutely, I agree. That is a way to do it. Push pull legs is the best, or upper lower, or full body. Like, there's so many variations. It doesn't matter.
It's kind of coming back to the conversation we were having. Was it last week on the podcast or the week before? It's just kind of the availability of information, and then not even availability at that point, but then when everyone is espousing that their way is the best way.
Yes.
It can be very confusing.
Yeah, absolutely, it can, and I get it from the perspective of like, I've been guilty of it myself. I think way back in the day when I first started as a coach, I was like, no, this is the only way to train.
Right.
This specific split, or this is the way to do it, or it was like I just had a very sort of lower level approach to training, and I was like, well, no, this is the only way you can train. You're a busy mum, 3 kids, working a full-time job. If you can't train 5 days a week, you don't want it enough.
Push pull legs 6 days a week.
Yeah,
That's
if you can't train 6 days a week, if you can't commit to 10, 15,000 steps a day, you don't want it enough. We have the same amount of hours.
That's a bit of a stigma around that one, isn't it, as well?
We all have.
Enough.
I'm 100%. I put my hand up and say I'm guilty.
Yep.
Back in the day, I literally would say like, oh no, we all have the same amount of hours in a day. Like you can achieve what you want. And I'm like, I was like, when I first started as a PT, I was 21, single, lived alone, worked 20 hours a week in a gym.
You got a lot of time to train.
I had so much time to train. I had so much time to do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And as soon as I actually sort of started actually working with people and realizing that, like, we don't have the same amount of hours in a day.
I had the image of you then as like the entrepreneur, like everyone's got the same 24 hours in a day. You making business calls on the phone.
Dude, I thought I was.
The little earpiece and the...
Jocko Willink, Andrew Frisella,
Yep.
Grant Cardone.
Yep.
All of these, like, because I was a massive listener of the MF CEO podcast, which is Andy Frisella's original one. And that's actually what pushed me to get into PT. So I will never, ever talk negatively about it. And it helped instill and build a lot of habits. And I think a lot of the things that Andy talks about is amazing. And if you're actually someone who wants to get up and get after something, then he's somewhere to start. And you can expand on the circle through the guys that he has on the podcast and just in his inner circle. They're some of the wealthiest and most successful people in the world. Success breeds success. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is the secret. This is, you can get up at 3 a.m.
Everyone needs this.
Yeah, everyone needs this.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, nah.
No. Well, that's the kind of dose of reality that you get coming into the fitness space, particularly from our perspectives coming in. We both started with PT, is that especially when you start, like, because you do that at the start of every session, right? You're always going to communicate with you, hey, what's been going on and blah, blah, blah. and they'll have a whole host of things that you've never dealt with or experienced, or sometimes even just hard to understand. And then, it's no wonder that this person is like, oh, I was up all night with the kids and this person's sick and I had to got this going on and business stress or whatever. And it's like, no wonder they didn't get their session in on the weekend or work too hard in the session that you were training them in. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely.
Any surprise?
No, absolutely not. And now that I look back at it, I'm like, fuck, I was an idiot. But I guess
Look back, how far? 5 minutes?
No, I'd like to say I'm pretty grown now.
Yes.
I have a better understanding, better empathy for people, and an understanding. Again, it just comes from working with hundreds. I'd probably say I'd close to, if not over, worked with 1,000 people now.
Yep.
From a face-to-face group fitness setting and online.
Yep.
In my 6 years of PT.
I'd probably be about the same.
So,
yep.
Once you start to, when you work with 10 people, you don't really understand. You work with 100 people, you sort of get a little bit of an idea. But it's not until you've worked with up to or more than 1,000 people that you're really like, fuck. No one is the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
So why would I sit there and say that every single person needs to do the same training split and every single person needs to do the same exercises? Everyone needs to do the same sets, reps, intensity, all of it. That's not the case.
It doesn't make sense, especially when you say, for example, if you have 3 different individuals and you were to run the exact same program for these people, and, even if their conditions were similar or whatever, you'll probably find 3 different sets of adaptations or results from running that same program for the same amount of time.
Absolutely. I think even if people you could take 3 people, and I'll use when I worked back at Jets as an example, we had a whole group of ladies who would work upstairs at the Centrelink head office. It wasn't an actual Centrelink center.
That was above your gym.
That was above the gym. And they all worked the same job. But I could pick 3 of them and none of them could train the same.
Yeah.
They all had different family commitments. Some of their kids had grown and they're out of home. Some of their kids were still in home. Some of them didn't have kids. It was just, some of them enjoyed going on runs with their partners, so they had less time to commit to gym or something like that. There was a lot of different variants in just that alone. That was a bit you just start to sort of realize you're like, okay, something's not right here.
That's also then your role as a coach, as a PT, is to see how they adapt.
Yes.
And then modify as necessary.
Absolutely. And that's what we were talking about last week with relation to tracking data and tracking information and having things laid out and a plan of attack and sitting down with the individual and talking about their goals and where they want to be and things like that. Because at the end of the day, and I know we see it within this gym a lot, but there's a lot of people who have contending goals.
For sure.
And I know you've worked with a few of the people who are on bronze and silver and things like that. And they're kind of like, oh, I want to Paddy, for example.
Yep.
That was his goal.
He wanted to run the Gold Coast half marathon. That would have been, it was around the middle of the year. And then we had around July. And then we had Deadlift for Dogs in late August.
Yep.
So we had deadlift only competition and we had a half marathon, 2 very different ends.
So he was prepping for it, both at once.
And he got PBs on both as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely an option to do. But it's just understanding, incorporating those multiple contending goals and understanding what's a priority at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
And sitting down with that individual and taking that information in. Okay, cool. How many days a week can you train? Okay, cool. What is your home life like? Sweet. Do you have kids? Do you not? Do you have a partner that you need to commit to? Do you have external things that you commit to? Do you have a dog that you need to walk every day? Is there all of these little intricacies and things like that? How many times a week do you want to train?
Yeah.
Just because someone has the time to train 6 days a week doesn't mean they should.
That is a conversation that I have with every person coming into this gym when they sign up is I'll ask them those 2 questions. How many days do you want to train? And then how many days do you think you can actually manage?
Yep.
And if you want to do 4, but you feel like 4 is a bit of a stretch and 3 you could get in really consistently, let's start with 3.
Yep.
Because you can always add more.
Well, that's the conversation I start with the majority. And a lot of the guys who come and start working with me, there's 2 sort of levels to the people that I start working with. And there are people who are either competitors and been competing for a little bit of time or even a long time, or they're brand new to lifting.
Yeah.
Those 2 people don't necessarily sort of sit on the same level with relation to how often they can train and their commitment to training and things like that. And quite often when someone's brand new or they're newer or they're getting back into it or whatever that might be, they'll turn around and they'll be like, oh, I could train 4 or 5 days a week. And I'm like, I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah.
You haven't trained for 10 months.
Yep.
You've not done anything. You've been working, you've been focusing on other goals in your other external parts of your life. Let's start with 3 days full body.
Yep.
Let's run that for a month.
Yep.
4 weeks. All I want to see from you is those 3 sessions done every week. Perfect. You've hit those. All right, cool. Now let's go to 4. If they're still frothing that and they're getting through them and they 9 times out of 10, they get through that and they're kind of like, actually, you know what? I'd probably like to stay on the 4. I know I said I could do 5, but the 4 works really well. 5th day, I get to go for a walk with my partner down the beach. And it's like, I really enjoy that time with them.
Especially if you're getting results with less. It's kind of like, do you have to do more? Like, you might want to do more.
Yeah.
Do you have to? Maybe not for your goals, maybe not for your priorities, maybe not for the current situation that you're in, especially coming back to our conversation last week, the novelty of stimulus for someone who hasn't trained for 10 months. 3 days is probably going to be plenty and you're going to progress really nicely. You're not going to have too much fatigue rolling around and you can still do all the other things that you want to do.
Yeah. And as you said, less is more. Like, you'll get caught up in, okay, well, with training, the more I do, the better. And it's like, well, no, there's a point of diminishing returns. And there's stimulus to fatigue ratio, and there's all these different little intricacies that you need to understand about the human body that you don't actually need to understand, but you just need to have some sort of an awareness about that. Like, hey, less is more sometimes. It doesn't mean you need to go and train 6 days a week just because you can. You might get the same amount, if not better results from 4 days because you can really commit to those 4 days. And when you go in to do those 4 days, you give 100% effort. Whereas once you start to drag it out to 6 days and all of a sudden you get through your 4, you've done pretty well. 5th day rolls around. You might have had a bigger week at work. You might be a little bit tired. You roll in, the 5th day is shit. You then come in for the 6th day. You're like, I don't really want to be here. I don't want to do this. I'm sick of being at the gym.
Yep.
I'd rather not. And then you have no effort on the 6th day. And then all of a sudden you have 1 day rest. And you're like,
straight back into it.
I got to go again. And now I got to repeat this cycle. And all of a sudden, the first 4 days that were really good turn to 3, and then it's 2. And then by the 3rd or 4th week, you're just so fucked you can't do any of them properly.
Especially for the newer person that you're trying to get some buy-in for this individual to get some momentum. And we know that, as we discussed last week, training being the averages over time, right? It's like, well, if that person then kicks the bucket at week 4 and they, instead of maybe doing 3 sessions consistently for 12 weeks, they've done like 5 and then 4 and then 3, 2, 1, and then all of a sudden they're not training. And you've accumulated a lot more over doing less over a longer period of time than you had trying to smash yourself too fast, too soon.
Yeah, and from a coaching perspective, like as you said, generating buy-in, like you don't want to have a client come to you, you burn them out in 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden they go back and they hate training now.
Yeah.
Like, why would I do that? Why would I want to train that many times? That's shit. Like, I don't like this. I don't like training. I'm done. I want to quit.
Throw the whole thing out.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you've had a client that may have stayed with you 6, 12, 18, 2 years, like, all this time because you've just flogged the shit out of them from the gate. And then all of it, they can't make it to the finish line.
Yep. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, except if you're in the Melbourne Cup today.
You want to be pushing pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I know, I'm not betting. Had no relevance.
Don't waste your money.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I can't pick winners anyway.
Oh, that's excellent.
Not just in horse racing, people.
Yeah, we're not just talking horses anymore.
But I think it's also important. Like, I want to kind of dial this in a little bit in terms of giving you guys a little bit of maybe a thought process around some things in a way in which to maybe attack your own training. Obviously, Nexus, we would say we specialize in powerlifting.
Yes.
Strength sports.
Yep.
We are great at what we do. We are also very big and huge supporters of bodybuilding and getting jacked and things like that in the off season.
Yep.
So I think it's important to sort of create a little bit of a framework around, like, powerlifting versus bodybuilding. How many times a week can you come in and do compound lifts versus how many times a week can you come in and do your bodybuilding style of training?
Body
like
part
that.
training.
Yeah.
Well, that's like with powerlifting, we have the context of, it's really interesting that when I started to do powerlifting training and you go into your commercial gym or whatever and they're like, hey, what are you training today? And it's like, is it legs? Is it chest? Is it back? And you're like, there's a bit of everything in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it kind of powerlifting can often turn into a little bit more of a full body kind of program in some sense, but it's more just kind of prioritization of the specific lifts and making sure that you can have depending on the frequency that you want to do, but a layout of those that they don't conflict too much is probably the biggest thing.
Yes.
And then when you're talking from the perspective of body part or bodybuilding training, it's also the similar thing, but more in relation to the specific muscle groups, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I guess I can even utilize myself as a bit of an example with this, with relation to I'm coming in the back end of a prep. I am 4 days out.
Yep.
Five days
Take a
out
deep
from
breath.
comp. Yeah, 5 days out from comp, which is crazy to me to think about. And because of the type of person I am, I'm already sitting down and structuring my post-comp training. Now, currently, and that's just something I need for my own mind to just keep it sort of...
I was going to say, you're probably excited for that.
Preoccupied, or I guess like I'm excited, but it also just gives me something to look forward to that takes my mind a little bit off the comp this week because I'm, drop nerves down. You want to try to be a bit more relaxed through the week. I know I'm going to shit my pants on the day, but that's okay. Hopefully not literally. But in looking at my current training schedule, I'm training 4 times a week. Leading into prep, I was benching 3 times a week, squatting twice, deadlifting once.
Yep.
For me, that frequency has worked very well. Now, it took me a very, very, very long time to be able to squat twice a week because I had really dodgy knees. So Wilbo and me have been working together now for a little bit over 3 years. This is my 3rd year competing. I started with Will about 6 months before my first comp.
Yep.
It's about 3.5 years I've been working with Wilbo, nearly 4 maybe. And I've always only been able to handle very low squat and leg volume in general, just horrible knees and just didn't really have a great base of strength there and things like that. However, we're now at a point where I can squat twice a week, which has been phenomenal. It's progressed my squat pattern and all of my leg movements massively, and it's been a great time to be able to do that. I've also been able to push my bench up to 3 to 4 times a week. I think there was a point through my off season that I was benching 4 times a week.
Josh loves bench.
Non-specific bench, but there was like variations and things like that. And post-comp, I'm looking to go to a 6-day push-pull legs split.
Yep.
So I've gone from 4 days to 6.
Cool.
Straight away 2 extra days.
Yep.
However, I also understand the increase in frequency and things like that is going to play a massive role. So those days aren't going to be huge.
As big as they have been.
Probably going to be capping at about an hour session, I'd say, would be ideal for me in comparison to my 2 to 3 hour sessions I'm doing at the moment for PL.
So even if you were looking there at just like total amount of work, if you were just to do 6 by 1 hour sessions, that's still less work overall.
It's less time spent in the gym, but it's going to be more work.
More volume.
More volume accumulated. Because if I look at it from the perspective of PL at the moment, let's say roughly my compound movements take me about an hour, sometimes an hour and a half for squats, depending on what's going on, if it's a bigger day. And that's, when we look at squats, you have to take into consideration at the moment I've been training with Hans the whole prep, which has been phenomenal. And so him and me have been swapping in and out of the rack. We've had to drop the height up and down. Some of the times we've had to change our weights. He has to wrap. He then wraps me. Like it's
a process.
It's a process of time that it does. Like sometimes it can take an hour and a half. You want to make sure you're warmed up properly. You want to make sure everything's feeling good. So that process in itself can take some time. Whereas coming into what I would classify as more of a hypertrophy bodybuilding split of push-pull legs, my first leg exercise might be a hack squat.
Yep.
I could pretty much jump on the hack squat almost immediately after walking in.
Not here, though.
Not here, no. Or pendulum.
Leg press or something.
Belt squat, something like that, like some sort of leg accessory. And I could almost jump straight on and start warming up and be warmed up, ready to go within about 5-10 minutes and start training within 15.
As opposed to warming up for something in the realm of a high 200
squat. To an hour, yeah.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah, it's a massive process, taking in the time to actually get into a little bit of mobility work before training for about half hour. And then by the time you actually get through your warm-up sets, which is another half hour to 40 minutes sometimes, like it's a time, Yep. And ideally, I'm going to have most of my sessions done within that time moving forward.
Yeah.
For a bit of a mental reset.
Yeah.
But the amount of work I've gotten within that session is going to be greater.
Sure. Well, especially we spoke about that last week in just relation to, things like volume and how much you might need, especially at the start. You probably find that you'll do a little bit less, and then over time you can accumulate.
Absolutely. I'm looking to start. I might do. This is a rough guess, but I'm looking to do probably three working sets on the first exercise, 2 for most of the accessories.
Yep.
I'm going to sit down and program it all effectively and like properly and things like that. There's certain areas I want to grow that I think are lacking in terms of from an aesthetic perspective as well. But I know that working on these areas is also going to benefit me long term in PL because more muscle mass is always going to help, especially looking to fill out the 125s at some point. So for me, I will start to prioritize volume towards the specific body areas I want to grow, which is not something we necessarily look at when we're in a powerlifting competition, to the point where I think roughly, what is it, like 8 to 10 sets to maintain muscle group, roughly something around there, or 10 to 12 sets to grow a muscle group.
And again, we're talking some
Very general, rough ideas.
People are individual.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm going to look to, some of the areas I want to grow, I'll probably be looking to push 15, 16 sets a week across the course of the week. And then some of the other areas I'm not necessarily needing to grow as much. They might cop 5 to 8 sets a week. And
sit on the back burner a little bit more.
Balancing the volume around those sort of things. Whereas obviously when we look at PL, I don't look at any of that. No. I look at, I want to squat more.
Yep.
Okay, this is what I need to do. I need to squat more. If I want to get better at bench, okay, well, for the skill-based aspect of bench, I'm going to spend more time benching.
For sure, yeah. Well, that's the big thing as well, like when it comes to programming a little bit more for hypertrophy, maybe even something like power building, a strength and size program or whatever. There's always a prioritization of lifts, and there has to be when you're writing a program, because if you put something up first, it is the priority. You have the most energy to give, you have the most. And so that's where, you can start getting a little bit more specific into what do you want to focus on for this kind of phase. And particularly with bodybuilders and stuff, they have obviously a different approach. We're probably going to be putting something like a squat bench or a deadlift variation up the top of the workout, where for bodybuilding, that might be a little bit more down the order. They might have a little bit more overload going into lagging body parts or something like that, or going through a bit more of a prioritizing phase, focusing on different muscle groups. The chest or something is maybe up front on a couple of your workouts. Maybe you want it a little bit more balanced, and maybe it's chest one day and then it's back on the other upper body day or something like that. Right?
Yeah, well, I guess that comes down to how you split it out as well, right? As I said, I'm going to be doing push-pull legs.
Yep.
So for me, push days, probably I want to build my chest. I'll start with chest.
Yep.
Pull days, I really want to develop through my mid-back a lot more. So I'll start with some form of row that targets my mid-back and rear delts. I want to really sort of create a bit of a broader, wider turtle shell type back. Leg days for me, the big thing is I'm going to need to prioritize, funnily enough, calf health and calves in general, with some injuries and things like that have been going on. So for me, the priority on my first leg day is going to be calves and hamstrings. Just working on some imbalances and working on some things that I have identified as weak points for me, from both like a muscular and aesthetic perspective, but also from an output and strength-based perspective as well, to help with lifts long term. So that's kind of like where you'd sit down with your coach and you're like, okay, cool. I was sitting down with one of my clients post the novice comp, and he said, okay, I want to do bodybuilding show. Cool. I've never truly trained like a true bodybuilder. I know how to program for them. I know how to understand. I understand all the basis and all the principles behind how it all works and everything like that. We've just discussed them. And he's like, but I want to stay with you for programming, and I want to work with another coach for nutrition. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I really like that. It's something a bit different. It's something left of field a little bit to what I've normally done. And so we'll sit down once a month on our call, and we'll go through and we'll look at his progress pictures, and we'll assess his progress across his lifts and things like that. And I'm like, okay, cool. We wanted to start with prioritizing hamstrings and shoulders. And within the first 12 weeks, he made a massive improvement on his hamstrings and shoulders. And we said, okay, cool. We've put a lot of effort into the hamstrings and the shoulders. Now, both of those are looking quite good. What we've actually noticed is, due to the growth with the shoulders, his chest is lagging a little bit.
Yep.
So we've shifted a little bit of the focus from the shoulders, put it back into his chest, and we've put a little bit more work back into the posterior chain as a whole. So his layout at the moment is push, pull, posterior chain, shoulders and chest.
Yeah. So that's 5 days? 4 days?
5 days a week.
5 days a week, yep.
So it's, I guess you'd class it as an unorthodox program, because it's not necessarily what you would expect. It's not a push-pull legs. It's not a full body. It's not I'm doing chest today.
Upper lower. It's,
exactly right. It's
part.
not an upper lower. He does push-pull, upper lower, and then he'll go in and do posterior chain, which incorporates, again, upper lower.
Yep.
But it's combined in the one session, and it's more of a posterior focus. So hamstrings, back,
yep,
rear delts, etc. And then the 5th day is his chest and shoulders.
Yep.
So again, that's what I would generally classify as a push day, but we've put a little bit more of an emphasis on just chest and shoulders rather than, chest, shoulders, arms, triceps, etc.
Sure.
Like
it doesn't have to like fall, into any of these categories necessarily, right? Like
No.
it doesn't have to be any of these things. And as we find with more individuals with more, specific demands on their lifestyle, on their goals, on their ability to maybe recover from certain things as well is obviously a factor that you'll find most times that some of those programs can be a really good base to start from, but then you might find that, okay, this person doesn't really recover well with their hamstrings. Maybe we've got to have a little bit less volume on this day or something like that so it doesn't bleed over into the other. And then you can start just moving things around as required. But, as long as that you have a good purpose behind those decisions, I think that you can just really turn like a really great templated program based off some of these things that we're talking about, push, pull, legs, upper, lower, split, full body, whatever it might be, and turn it into a really good specific program for that person at that time.
Yeah, I know we've done podcasts on it before with relation to templated programming and things like that. And we spoke about at the start, we've now got Gambaru, which you would say is more or less a templated program. It's very similar. There's no real individualization for the individual who's looking to do that particular program. However, it is a great base template. Now, there is an ability to probably swap out maybe one or two of the exercises. Could be doing a hamstring curl and you might want to do seated instead of lying, or it's a tricep exercise and you might want to do something overhead instead of pushing down or something like that. Like it's having these like templates and everything like that give you a bit of an understanding and a basis, and then you build upon that. It's not just slapping it all together and, okay, you get this program and you get the same one and you get the same one. And you've got a mum who's 40 with 3 kids. You've got a single 18-year-old male who wants to grow and become the next C-bum. And then you've got some middle-aged dad who wants to get really strong.
Yeah.
And they're all in the same program.
Right.
You don't want that.
No. But you might as well,
but they might have the same base template.
I was going to say that. It's like, especially when we're writing programs, especially at a higher degree of volume of programs, and especially if you have someone who's like, maybe in mind that you're like, oh, this person's got a few similarities with this person, and maybe there's a couple of similar goals or frequency that they can attain. You might build someone else's program off the basis of someone that you've already been working with.
Yep.
You're always trying to find ways to be more efficient with your programming, but also effective, right? So you might have that basis of a template, but then you're probably going to be modifying it based on the individual circumstances of that person.
Yeah, and I know I've had it before. Like it's almost impossible as a coach when you work with a higher volume of clients. Especially
not writing every program from scratch. Put it that way.
No, absolutely not. If there is a coach who's doing that, I applaud you. You must have a lot of time on your hands.
Yep.
But like I've had it happen in the gym before, where I've had 3 clients and they were all had the same amount of training days a week. They were all training 4 days a week. They were all coming into a competition at similar time frames. So they were maybe a week or 2 out between them, or 2 of them were doing the same comp and 1 was a week behind. And they all came in one day and they all benched.
Yep.
And then they came in the next day and they all had squats.
Yep.
And they were like, oh, we're following like the same program. I'm like, okay, have a look at the template. Is it a similar structure? Absolutely.
Yep.
But have a look at the individualization in relation to like, okay, you've got more squat volume than this person because you can handle more squat volume and you're actually a week behind them, so we can afford to have that little bit of extra fatigue at the moment. This person here has a very low squat volume, so they're only doing 1 set of squats. Yes, you might be squatting on the same day, but they have 1 set, you have 5. The other person has got a secondary bench on that day, whereas you guys don't have that. And things like just letting them understand that like it's very hard to come from a place of like internet people who are like, everyone has to have a different program. It's like, well, the basis of the programs can be the same. And I know there's a lot of coaches out there who say the same thing. Is like the basis, the foundation of the template can be the same. It's, as you said, how you individualize that for the person, or how you can change things up, and understanding where they're at as a coach and how to manipulate these variables is what coaching is.
100%.
And that's what sets it apart from templated training.
Well, especially like even in the format of running semi-private here, it's like we've got, 2 groups on 2 different days. Sometimes it can look very similar for, especially the boys training together because they've done the same comps and things like that. They did the same deadlift comp. And it's like, you're going to have a lot of similarities in between your program, especially if all your goals are pretty similar.
Yeah.
But there's obviously a few key differences there and stuff like that. And then so some of them might ask, like, oh, why is he doing that and I'm not doing that? And it's like, well, I can explain it and we can go through that. But it's also just, some people demand a few different things, and some things just don't work for everyone, especially when we start looking at, individual differences from a biomechanics perspective as well. And it's like, that was something that Paddy's parents actually brought up when it came to the deadlift comp. They're like, how come you have to move it so much further than everyone else? It's like, well, because he's 6'5" or something, and just,
That's a cop-out, Paddy.
That's a cop-out, yeah. Still got more than, no, I didn't. We got the same. But, yeah, it's like there are going to be those little differences that start to really shine through. And if you don't adhere to those, you could, one person could really advantage and the other person could be super disadvantaged from that.
Yeah. And as you said, like with relation to the semi-private stuff, it also makes sense to have people following a similar program because, hey, you're all coming in on a Tuesday and a Thursday at 5 p.m. I'm not going to have, you're not going to have one person do squat, one person do bench, one person do deadlift, one person start with something else, take up the whole gym so no one else can train. It's like, all right, boys, you're all going to deadlift today.
Yeah.
Jump in.
Yeah.
Bit of camaraderie.
For sure.
Bit of fun.
Yeah. It breeds a lot of that healthy competition as well, especially if, two boys are doing something similar. There's always a bit of shit talk flying around and stuff like that.
And you need that. Like, there's no point getting into a group setting and then having everyone off in their corners on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially you got one person upstairs and then I'm doing laps up and down the stairs every 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's always fun when I help step in and cover that and I'm jumping up and down between stairs. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, I did that on purpose for that week that I was away.
Yeah, I love this. I love stairs.
Yeah.
But yeah, it comes back to like that. Not everything has to be orthodox, and we can bring it back to, I've had a client who was doing FIFO, for example, and he was like, oh, I can only train an hour a day.
Yep.
But I want to do powerlifting.
Right.
He's like, I can train 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. And I was like, okay, cool. Why don't we just do something like day one, you only go in and deadlift. You've got an hour, go in and deadlift.
Yep.
Because he's like, I can't really get like compound lifts and accessories in. But I really struggle. Like, I've never been able to find a program that sort of accommodates for that. And I'm like, okay, cool. Deadlift on day one.
Yep.
We're going to do upper body accessories on day two. You'll come in, or it might have been lower body accessories on day two, and then he comes in and benches on the third day. Fourth day, he was doing upper body accessories. Fifth day, he squats. All of a sudden, he's got SBD work plus accessories over a 5-day split, fitting into his schedule of only being able to train an hour a day.
Yep.
Perfectly.
Yep. As opposed to maybe he's, particularly a lot of 5-day powerlifting programs are probably going to have something like a squat, bench, and dead right at the top of the order.
Yep.
And then accessories after that. And it's like, yeah, those sessions can go up 1.5 to 2 hours. And if you have
the big thing he said is he just really struggled to find anything that could accommodate for that. So he kind of gave up on the idea of doing it.
Right.
And I was like, this is where it's a great sort of asset to have a coach who can individualize and sort of think on their feet and sort of look at things from a little bit of a broader perspective and be like, you don't have to do that. Like, you just don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to go in and do squats and accessories. Might it be, quote unquote, a little bit more optimal?
You could argue it.
Yep. Maybe.
Yep. Not for this person, though, at this time.
Wasn't for this person. Right. Wasn't going to work for him.
Yeah.
So what was more optimal for him? The setup we had.
Especially when, it comes back to what we were talking about before with the amount of days that you can train, especially then also from the amount of time that you can train in any one session. You don't want to be setting that bar, too far above where they can actually do, especially because, when you start to look at that and go, oh, I'm not doing the work or I'm not completing the program, that can really fuck with you from a psychological perspective as well. You want to give them the opportunity to win and do well. And we talk about it often. It's our slogan, build momentum with your training.
Yes.
You're not building momentum by leaving sets on the table and unfinished work. You often look at that and go, well, fuck, maybe I could be doing better. Or you end up maybe throwing in the towel because it's just not working for you. But maybe you're just on the wrong program.
Yeah.
Right?
You want to stack some wins.
Yeah.
And you can't really stack wins if you sort of feel like you're chasing your feet every day.
You're always
of the week.
behind. Yeah.
And I've done it before. I've been there and I've been like, fuck, I can't get this done and this session's taking too long. And I'm like, I felt like it was on me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, what am I doing wrong? But I'm already there for 3 hours. And I'm like, I can't get it done.
Yeah.
Like, I just physically could not get the work done that was assigned to me at the time. And then all of a sudden, volume drops, sort of frequency drops, and progress goes through the roof. And I'm like, oh,
yeah,
wasn't me.
This
program I was following at the time wasn't necessarily working for me.
For sure. And it's like, and again, it comes back to especially if you have a good coach, if you have someone in your corner. This is what the coach's job is to do, is to solve the problems that the client is having.
Yes.
You're having a problem of not being able to get all the work in. Maybe it's just too much work.
Mm.
Maybe there is other factors. Maybe we need to have a conversation. Maybe you just, you're dogging it a little bit, but
maybe you are sandbagging shit, taking the piss a little bit.
Maybe you're taking too long of a rest period. I know some of the boys in here, sometimes they're like, 12-minute rest. You know what I mean? It's like, bro, if you're really needing to take 12-minute rests, maybe the program needs to be adjusted a little bit, right? Feeling personally attacked. Moving on.
Yeah, we'll 15 to 20 minutes. No, that's taking the piss. But I can openly admit that, right? And I'm also in a position where, for me, time isn't necessarily a factor for the most part for my training.
Yeah.
I can afford to have that little bit of longer in the gym. I can afford to be here on a Friday afternoon for 4 hours.
Well, I'm kind of thinking of the person who might be like, I've got all this going on and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I really need to get out of the gym and keep it moving, get all this. It's like, but they're sitting around for 12 minutes in between sets on their phone.
Absolutely, yeah. Then you look at those people and you're kind of like, hey, you know what? Cool, set a timer.
Set a timer.
6 minutes.
Yeah.
I remember the first strength program I ever followed had specific times. It was like, you need to rest this long between this exercise and time it.
Yeah.
And every time I'd do it. And it was straight away I'd get up. And all of a sudden I could keep doing the exercise. I was like, oh.
Yeah. Likewise, that you have some people that like they do a set of bench and it was hard and then they're like, all right, I'm ready to go again like a minute later. And you're like, you know what? Set a timer for 3 minutes.
Trying to teach those clients about, rest and things like that can be a little bit more difficult at the start. And it's a conversation that needs to be had to be like, I have clients who come in and do it all the time. They'll do all this work and then they're like, oh yeah, we're done in like 50 minutes. And I'm just like, bro, that session would take me like 2 hours.
For sure. Well, again, it's just coming down to some of those individual differences, and like if, for example, like I had this with Miles and his brother, 2 boys that are in the semi-private, where Miles looked at Callum's program. Callum's still kind of new to a lot of this stuff and he's been doing a bit of training for sure, but particularly a lot of the lower body stuff he hasn't done a lot of. And Miles looked at his program and he's like, bro, what the fuck? He's like, I would die doing this program. I'm like, that's why you've got your own. That's why it's not yours.
Yes.
And Callum's not going to die. He needs a little bit more exposure to this stuff. He needs more practice. He's not generating the same levels of force and fatigue that you are with with these basic exercises. So he needs a little bit more time to build up to that. He can afford to do a little bit more right now.
Yeah. It comes back to that stimulus to fatigue ratio. Yep. Mentioned briefly before. It's like you see someone like Anthony Krasner, the Yeti. He is going to need more time when he's working up to a 400 plus kilo squat.
Yes.
Than someone who's working up to a set of 80 for 5.
Yeah. 2 very different things.
He needs 10 to 15 minutes rest.
Yep. Clean up the blood out of his nose.
Yeah. Like it's vastly different. Like it's, it's all relative at the end of the day. Someone's heavy is still heavy, regardless of the weight on the bar. But at the same time, from a systemic fatigue point of view and things like that, like to get to 400 kilos, he's probably doing... he's probably someone who jumps 50 kilos or more at a time. Like probably even way more at
probably
a time.
More at sometimes, yeah.
Psycho. I've seen Wilbo come in before and start deadies and I was like, oh yeah, sweet man, I'm just doing my top set 170 today. He's like, yeah, sweet, I'll just start warming up there. It's like, yeah, okay, thanks, bro.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that one.
Yep.
And he just picks it up and starts going. And I was like,
alpha move.
But it's all relative, right? He deadlifts nearly 400 kilos.
Yep. Did he come up to you and just grab you by the face and push you out of the way so he gets
he just grunted.
Just grunted.
Okay, sorry, Will.
Sorry, bro.
But no, like in comparison to someone warming up to a set of 80, you might do 40, 60, 80.
Yeah.
You've got 2 warm-up sets before you get to 80 kilos.
Yep.
Anthony might have 5 or 6. There's a lot of difference in terms of accumulated volume and things like that. And yes, he's worked to a point in which he can do that. But admittedly, his sessions are going to take a lot longer.
Yeah.
Than someone else. So
that's something that happens a lot when people just start to get stronger and they're like, it's like, oh, it's like my sessions are taking longer. It's like, yeah, stronger. Like you need to have a little bit more recovery in between.
Getting stronger and coming into a comp.
Yes.
There are 2 times when I see people and they're like, oh, I used to be able to do this session in an hour. Now it takes me 2. Like, yes, Your body is accumulating fatigue. Your body is getting run down. Your body is accumulating volume and it's accumulating all of these different things that we want. It's accumulating stimulus to be able to grow and to get better at the skill that we're trying to improve and adapt. And you're going to naturally need a little bit more rest. or it's going to take you a little bit longer to get to that top set now than it used to when you first rolled in and would just slap a 20 on and go for gold on the bench. And now all of a sudden you have to slap a few 20s on and you're just like, this takes a bit longer to get there.
Yeah. That's also, again, another highlight of having a coach and just having that conversation about certain expectations and understanding that, yeah, things are going to change over time as well. Like that's something that we always try and revisit here is just have another conversation with that person every few months, maybe every 6 months, depending on who they are and what kind of phase of training they're in. But just like, has shit changed for you? You know, like what has changed? What's moved around? What do we need to adjust? What's, you know, that program that worked really well 6 months ago might not work well now, you know?
Yeah, there's been heaps of times I've had to sit down and revisit with clients and I'm like, this structure has been working for so long and now it doesn't.
Yeah.
And on the retrospect, I've had clients who we've maybe tried to change up the program a little bit. Maybe we wanted to keep it a little bit fresher or a bit more entertaining mentally or something like that, just a slight change up. And we get a couple of months in and they're like, just like it's different, but I'm just not progressing as much or I'm not enjoying it as much. And then we might go back to the same structure they were doing and all of a sudden they're making the same progress again and that just works for them.
Yeah.
Like I know Wilbo and me did the same thing the start of this year. We ran a sort of mini peak for myself and the structure and the layout was like perfect. And then as we sort of transitioned and Will was like, okay, cool, do you want a bit of a change up? I was like, yeah, I'm getting a bit over it, blah, blah, blah. And we sort of changed it up. And then as I was coming back into prep, we kept the structure that we changed it up to. And I just wasn't feeling it as much. I just wasn't like vibing it as much. I wasn't enjoying it. And then I kind of looked at it and I was like, you know what, why don't we just go back to this? Because for me, mentally and psychologically, I knew that this worked. I knew that I was recovering well. I knew that similar variables are at play at the moment and things like that. And then all of a sudden, it just blew up again. And like my training went really well and recovery was good and my body was feeling good and I felt confident to come in and lift. And I was like, fuck it, let's just run this. Let's just run this same structure again. I don't care if I run this structure for 6, 12, 18 months. It's working.
It's a good lesson as well, I think, to remember is that, like, you know, strength training is strength training. Like, you've got to do someone, who was the quote by? I can't remember who said it, and I'll paraphrase it a little bit, but something is like, strength training is like the same, you know, 10 to 12 exercises for your entire life and then you die. It's like, sometimes you don't need to just be changing shit. You don't need to be doing stuff. And the
I've seen
basic
that quote
stuff
from a few people, but yeah.
Yeah. And the basic stuff works. Like, this is the stuff that gets you stronger. This is the stuff that gets you bigger. And it's all sets and reps, right? Like, sometimes you just got to do the thing and you got to do more of it over time. And sometimes there is times where you need to pull it back and you need to adjust things and move them around. But at the end of the day, that is the stuff that gets the results, right?
Yeah. And all we're really here to do is get results. So, as we said, you know,
do training splits matter?
Absolutely not.
No. But there is obviously some individual differences, as we always come back to on this podcast, that do make up those decisions to find the best program for that person at that time, right?
And that's why you hire us as your coach.
Nexus, cross Gambaru, go get some good programs. And if those programs aren't fully doing it for you and you need a little bit more support, you need a little bit more individualization, you can always come to Nexus.
I had one of the boys yesterday message me and said, I was thinking about jumping on Gambaru, coming into a strength block, ready for my next comp. He goes, I was having a look at it, but I probably just need just that little bit of extra something, a little bit of extra oomph. And I was like, let's get you sorted, my man. We'll start up.
Yep. I believe I
probably pushed him towards me. I just had him reach out. I was like, sweet.
Yeah.
But it just, again, it comes down to that conversation. There's definitely going to be people within the gym that we talk to and have a look at, and we're like, oh, this is actually perfect for you.
Yeah.
The current phase you're in, the current availability of everything.
Yep.
This is going to be perfect.
Yep. And then when things change and they move around, cool, we'll have another conversation about it and we'll reevaluate and we'll put you on to the next best thing.
Yeah. And there we have it.
There we have it.
I reckon that's good. Yep.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much. We've enjoyed. I'm waving the camera even though it's off.
The camera's off, which is, you know, you can't see us crying.
This is the last podcast we'll do. No.
If we get invited back, if we're allowed back on by Will and Mickey, we would love that. Please keep us. We've had a great time. I appreciate everyone who has listened in. I know it's probably a little bit different not having Wilbo chime in and having Mickey there with her expertise as well, and everyone sort of just this, that, and the other.
I think we held it down.
I think we did pretty well. Keep on listening.
Yep.
Keep chiming in every Friday. Give us positive feedback only.
No constructive criticism.
Yeah, no constructive criticism. We don't accept that here.
Not in the public eye, anyway.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice work.
Thank you for listening to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned in the podcast today, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gyms based in the Gold Coast and Townsville. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram for any updates on what we are currently doing, and we'll see you all in the next episode.